Okay, continuing to start the brewing process, the first thing we need to do is obviously read the recipe. As you see here, it's got all your fermentables and your hops and stuff you should have in the kit, as I showed you earlier. It says the first thing you need to do is sanitize and activate the yeast. I don't need to sanitize anything yet because it's all going to be boiled. I'll show you that process a little bit later. But you do need to activate the yeast if you have a liquid yeast. This one has a dry yeast, so I don't have to do anything with it until I pitch it after it's boiled and going into the fermenter. So our next step we can skip to is steeping the specialty grains. Again, not all kits will have this. So the first thing we need to do is we need to put, as you can see, 2 gallons of water into our boil kettle. I've got my boil kettle set up here on the stove right now. So we need to put 2 gallons of water in there. I've already got a gallon and a half. So we'll go ahead and put another half gallon in there. I'm just using a pitcher here that's out of the sink just to make it easier to transfer and measure out. It's up to you whether you want to, go buy filtered water or just use tap water, or use a Brita filter or whatever. It's kind of up to you and your preference. If you have good water in the city, it's going to make good beer. So that's all in there. So now we want to turn it and start heating the water up. According to the directions, we want to be around 150 to 155 degrees. So that's what we're going to do. While that's going on, we need to put the specialty grains into a rosin bag like this. That way they can, seep in the water and get all the flavors out of the grains into the water, but not all the particulates. So to do that, what we're going to do, all the specialty grains are in this bag here. So here we go. Now I got my phone set up. Got to open this rosin bag up as wide as you can. That way all of them go in there. Set it over the bag that the specialty grains are in, and dump out all the specialty grains into there. It's going to make kind of a mess. Just be careful. If you want to do it over the pot, that's okay too. I would probably suggest that. This is the first time I've ever done specialty grains, so once they're all in there, bring them up, and then you'll tie a knot in the sack. You want to make sure there's enough room in the bag so the grains have room to move. And then once the water is at 150 to 155 degrees, we will put them in there to steep. Okay, now that the water, I heated it up to about 165, 170 degrees. I know it only needed to be at 150, 155, but when I open the lid, it's going to go down, and when I put in the grains, it's going to go down quite a bit too. So take the lid off, and we'll take the grains out of here. And then you just want to kind of put them in the pot. Gonna move them up and down, try to get them all wet. And once you do that, you want to set your timer for 20 minutes. That's what the recipe calls for. That way they can sit in the water for a good 20 minutes steeping. Again, you want to keep the water about 155 degrees. I'll put the lid with the thermometer back on here to see what it went down to. Let it climb back up a little bit and see what the final temperature is, and we'll let it sit for about 20 minutes. So you can see that it kind of stopped right at the 160 degree mark, which is just slightly higher than we want it. So turn the stove down a little bit. It won't heat up quite as much. We'll let them set for about 20 minutes. At the same time that's going, I'm also going to start heating up the water. And I just put my liquid extract in here. The liquid extract is very syrup-like, so if you heat it up, it'll come out and rinse the container out a little bit better than if you didn't heat it up. You don't have to, but it's a few tips that I've learned in the past. Okay, we got about a minute left. As you can see, the temperature right above 150. That's where we want it to be. So with a minute left or so, we'll go ahead and turn off that stove. Take the lid off of here. Set that aside there. And go ahead and we'll grab the bag out of there. It fell in while I took the lid off once. So then we'll take the bag off. You can put a strainer up top the pot and then take the bag out. The water. Try to let it drain all the liquid back into the pot. That's why I've got the strainer on top. So you let that drain back in. The other thing we'll need for the next step, we'll have to have the dry malt extract here. So we'll bring that over to the stove. And then just in preparation for the boil of the wort, which is what's in this pot is now called the wort. That's had the specialty grains in there. And after we add the extracts, it'll really be the wort there. So this recipe calls for 2 hop additions of the same hop. So I just got one big package. We need to split it in half because they're each ½ ounce hop additions. So I've got the scale here, which is a little container, tear it out. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open the hop packet, turn on the scale, it's shut off, tear it out. Okay, I'm just going to add the hops in here until we get ½ ounce of hops. There's ½ ounce. Okay, and then this package is 1 ounce, so then that's all I should need in there. Okay, those will be the first hops used. So this is pretty much all done. I'm just going to set it over there, keep draining into that water. We'll be adding that here in a second. So what you want to do is take out your extract here out of your hot water. Be very careful opening it up, not to spill it. They tend to be pretty full. There's a foil thing I've already taken off, but you'll need to take that off. Then you just dump that in. Make sure while you do that, you get a spoon out and start stirring it to make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom. And just to make sure I get all the extract out of there, I'm going to put some water back in here and see if I can get all of the extract to come out. So you're never going to get all of it out, but at least get most of it out as much as you can. Okay, that's pretty clean there. Now we'll go ahead and we'll open up the dry malt. Put the dry malt in. Again, this doesn't all need to be sterile yet because you're boiling it, so it's going to get sterilized. So as you pour the dry malt in, just make sure you kind of stir that. You want to stir it until it's all the way dissolved in the wort. At this time, you can kind of turn the heat back on. You want to bring it to a boil. So I'll turn the heat back on. That way it'll help dissolve it, but keep stirring it while it's not all dissolved yet. So that's pretty much all dissolved in there now. Make sure you scrape the bottom. You don't want anything sticking to the bottom while this happens. Okay. So now, the next thing in the recipe calls for adding 1 more gallon of water. That'll bring us up to about a 3.8 gallon boil. So we've got 1/4 of a gallon here. And another 3/4 of a gallon in this container. So that's all added in there. Stir that in, make sure it's all stirred up nice and good. And you get it to come to a boil. So it'll take a little bit to come to a boil. This you don't need the lid on, but it'll help come to a boil a little bit faster. So I'm going to bring the spoon out here and put the lid on, get it to come to a boil. So I'll wait until that comes to a boil, and then we have hops to add, and we can start the